We are glad that you're here. We're delighted to celebrate love. It is a wonderful way to do that, right? Valentine's Day, hopefully you've had a chance to perhaps spend some time with your sweetie or spend some time with folks that you love deeply. It is a time to remember that and give thanks for that, and we're just grateful that you're doing that here with us as well. So let's also get a little serious too. So Paul the Apostle has some great wisdom to share about love, in particular God's love for humanity and the way in which humanity needs to love in God's eyes and for God's sake in the world. So Paul writes a couple of letters that describe love, not the least of which is his letter to the church at Colossae. And so turn with me, if you will, to Colossians Chapter 3, where Paul describes a rather beautiful form of love. Colossians Chapter 3, beginning in the 12th verse of that chapter. As God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, patience. Bear with one another. And if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. Well, it is the day of love, a day to celebrate Valentine's Day. And when we tend to think about love, most of us think about all the highs, right? Love fills us with joy. Love fills us with excitement. Love fills us with elation. And that's all a good thing. But love also sometimes fills us with sorrow when we lose someone we love. It also offers us challenges with the people that we live with and love every single day. Love is filled with both high and low experiences, and it's fascinating because most of us choose to only acknowledge or live well into the fun part or the elation part, right? But the reality is there's a both and there's a compilation of all of those experiences together. The other thing I find fascinating about love is in the English language, we have one word to say, I love you, dear. I cherish everything about you. And I love chocolate as well. Yeah. I love you, Sadie, because you're my dearest child and I love all that you are. I also love my car. And it brings excitement to me. Isn't it weird? We have this one word, and it goes the whole gamut for people with whom we have deep, cherished relationships and also just sort of superficial kinds of things. And we need to know more about what this love is all about, this love of which God speaks. Well, thankfully, the Greek culture and the Greek language tells us a little bit more about love. The Greek culture and language is where the Bible in the New Testament, at least, gained for us a better and a deeper understanding of love. And there are a few Greek words that the Greek culture used to describe love that I want to call out for us. The first is philia. Filial love is that kind of humanitarian, altruistic love. It's a Greek word from which we get the English word Philadelphia, right? The city of brotherly love. So it's a kind of corporate love, a communal love, a love for humanity itself. Philanthropic also gives us this word. It's a love for humanity. Well, that's not the love of which Paul was writing, nor is it the love with which Jesus taught that we ought to live. Another word in the Greek language is eros. You might be familiar with some of the English words for that. It's a physical kind of love and an erotic kind of love. So erotic or erogenous are English words we get there. That's clearly not the kind of love that Jesus was talking about or Paul was writing about. Another word that doesn't actually appear in the Bible, but that the Greek language had for love was storge, S-T-O-R-G-E. And storge was the love that we have for our parents or the elders in society, that we cherish their teaching and their guidance and all that they have for us. But that likewise is not what Paul was writing about or Jesus taught about. What they wrote about and taught about was a specific kind of love called agape love, A-G-A-P-E. Agape love is this self-giving, self-sacrificial, unconditional love. If ever you've been on the Walk to Emmaus or any of our 3-day spiritual retreat weekends, you know agape well. It is that love of God that comes to us no matter what, no matter our condition, no matter our sinfulness, no matter our wayward ways, God still loves us. And God desires to be in a relationship with us, and that's agape love. And Paul is suggesting to us that we need to not only receive that love by God's grace, but that we need to live that love. That it becomes a kind of love that you literally can't hold on to. You've got to give away. It's why Paul would write so prolifically about it, not only in Colossians, but also in 1 Corinthians 13. You know that passage as well. It's known as the love chapter, often read at weddings. And in part, it describes love this way, this agape love, beginning in verse 4. Love is patient. Love is kind. Beginning some familiar phrases, right, that we just heard from in Colossians. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. That might be similar to humility and meekness and patience, right? It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. This is God's agape love. The love that God has for us and the love that we ought to have for each other. It's not just the romantic love that husband and wife might have for each other or girlfriend and boyfriend might have for each other. It is a love that is beyond that. It is a love that came to us because of God's grace. This amazing, unconditional, unmerited, unending love of God. And Paul is suggesting to us that we need to wear that love. Isn't that an interesting analogy? We need to wear that love. So he paints this beautiful metaphor in the letter to the church at Colossae that he says, look, put on these clothes. And the clothes are very specific. Meekness and humility, kindness and compassion, patience and forgiveness, and most of all, love. And a part of what that begins to get at is this wonderful imagery of clothing, right? I mean, we have often said the clothes make the person, right? So we need to dress up for our interviews, and we need to dress up for our tests, and we need to dress up to present ourselves to folks, and we say the clothes make the person. And there's a lot of reality to that, right? There's a lot of reality to the fact that we need to look good, we need to feel good. It helps us to present ourselves well. But I want to also suggest that Paul means something even deeper than that. Not only ought we to present ourselves well and to feel good about the way in which God is in our life, but we need to put on these clothes that make us who we are as followers of Jesus. We are to be people who are kind and compassionate, who are humble and meek, who are patient and forgiving. And that all of that wraps up to be this clothing that claims for us life itself. I mean, wouldn't you say that it's true that we put a lot of energy and effort into the clothes that we're wearing? I mean, I wore a tie for y'all today. Come on. Second Sunday in a row, right? Don't get used to it, okay? But I had a red tie. It's Valentine's Day. I thought I'd wear it, right? So we think about our clothes. In fact, my lovely bride used to make fun of me about this one thing. So every Saturday night, this little weird, just listen to me, hold out, and just, I kind of pick my clothes for the next day, right? I have to get up here early, so I want to have all that ready. Well, she used to make fun of me until she started working, and she starts doing the same thing now. So she picks out her clothes. So make fun of her, would you? No. But all this is to say, we put energy and effort into picking our clothes, wearing our clothes, trying to put on this great image, and innately it's a good thing. I mean, our kids do it too, right? When our kids are young, at some point, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, they want to start wearing and picking out their own clothes, right? You ever been through that, where your kid wants to pick out their clothes and you start to get just a little embarrassed by the fact that what they've picked out to wear, right? And so unlike middle school, when you drive your kid to middle school, they want to slither out the side of the car door so that nobody sees you taking them. When they're 5, 6, 7 years old, you kind of want to slither away from the car as they step out to school because we're afraid of what people might. I didn't dress that kid. They made their own choice. I didn't do that, right? So we put a lot of time and energy and effort into our clothing, and that's why Paul is giving us this powerful image that these clothes make us kind and compassionate, meek and humble, forgiving and patient, and most of all, loving. And when we first read this, it sounds as though love is sort of this separate component, but the reality is all that precedes it is what makes love what it is. Now, I needed to think through that, and I just had an image in my head. Some of you know I like to fancy myself as a snow skier. I love to ski. I go quite regularly. Haven't been in a couple years, but I love it. I love the smell of the mountain. I love the feel of the mountain. I love the air, and I love the view, and I love everything about it. And if you've ever been skiing, you know it takes a lot of clothes, right? So when you go skiing, you take things like this. So you've got after ski boots that you get to put on, right? They're big and clunky, and yet they're light and airy, right? And after you've had on your ski boots all day long, what do these feel like? Oh, the joy, right? They feel really nice. But when you first start, you've got to put on the layers. Aren't these pretty layers? You put on the long handles, right? And they're made of silk, or they're made of wool, or they're made of some product that helps you, and you begin to layer your clothing, right, as you go skiing. And so I wouldn't be caught dead without these beautiful things on, right? And then after you put that on, then this is my favorite. This is quite the piece, right? The bib. And it's the bib that begins to make you feel like a skier, right? Man, I'm going to be warm, and I'm going to be dry, and I'm going to be safe and secure. And the bib is going to make me go down those slopes well, right? So I put on the bib. And then I have my handy-dandy, trusty little fanny pack. Don't you love the fanny pack, right? It has all the good stuff in it, and of course there's gloves that are attached to it, and there are lots of things in it, not the least of which is the thing that makes you really cool, right? And then if it's really cold outside, I get to put this on and look like a robber or something, right? Look out, here I come, coming down the hill, right? But you also have to put on other things, like the beautiful socks that are wool that keep you warm, right? And then when all is said and done, after you've put on everything, the last thing you put on is the coat, right? And as you put on the coat, man, you have made the outfit. I'm looking good, man, this makes me look sharp, and I'm going to go down the hill all clean and savvy. It's not unlike the clothes that Paul was talking about, right? And so as we put on all of these layers, as we put on the long handles and the bibs and the boots and all the socks and all that kind of stuff, you learn the hard way that you want to go to the potty first before you put all that on, right? Because it takes a long time to get out of this stuff. But there's something important about the ordering of those clothes, right? Because the ordering is critical. It's the same way with love. Put on kindness and compassion, meekness and humility, patience and forgiveness. But most of all, put on love, because love is what binds it all together. But it wouldn't be love unless it was composed of all those other parts, because they are what make love what it is. And when you also say that as you put on these clothes, it takes energy, it takes effort, it takes diligence, it takes deliberation, it takes purpose, just like love, right? Because love is more than a feeling. Love is more than a thought. Love is more than words. It's action. It's the most active verb in the human language, I'm convinced, because it's not so much about what we think or feel, but it's the way in which we live, and it's what we do as followers of Jesus. And so we're called to live it out. So much so that the biblical images just are fulfilling as we begin to see how these articles of clothing, kindness and meekness and humility and compassion and patience and forgiveness, all make a huge difference. So when we read the story of the Good Samaritan, for instance, where the Samaritan stops and renders aid to the man who fell among robbers, he demonstrates love by offering kindness and compassion and helping to demonstrate what it means to be patient as he picks him up, puts him on his own animal, takes him to the inn, and cares for him. It's love incarnate. It's the same with the father of the prodigal son. He could have stood with all smugness on the front porch waiting for that boy to show up, tapping his foot and sort of groveling up to the front porch, right? No, he doesn't do that. He runs to him. He embraces him. He forgives him. He has patience for the way in which he squandered the family wealth, and he demonstrates mercy and compassion for the boy. He had put on love. It's the same way with the woman caught in adultery. You may recall that everyone else is ready to stone her to death, right? Jesus bows down, writes in the sand. He demonstrates forgiveness to her and patience for those who want to throw stones. To say to them with no uncertain terms, I love her just as God loves her, and he set her free, saving her physical life and her spiritual soul. The same with the woman at the well. Jesus was not to have spoken to her. It was against cultural mores. She shares her story. He patiently listens. He demonstrates in a tangible way that she is loved and forgiven. He compassionately helps her to know that God is with her and will go before her. And he demonstrates love because he's wearing all of those clothes, you see. We're called to do the same. As followers of Jesus, we have first been loved by God through Jesus and his sacrifice. His love that says, no matter what our sin, no matter what our frailty, no matter what our faults, that God loves us still. And we are then called to put on those same clothes and to love others the way that we have first been loved. We do it with our friends, right? I mean, with our family. Jesus was real clear that it's good to love your friends. John 15, Jesus says, no greater love has you than to lay down your life for your friends. Most of us would be willing to lay down our life for our friend, right? We love them. They're our friend. We care for them. We cherish them. Jesus would give us a new commandment in John chapter 13 as he bent down to wash the disciples' feet. He said, look, I give you a new commandment, that you love others as I have first loved you. And in that act of servitude, he has offered compassion and kindness. He's clearly made himself humble and meek before them. And he says, now go and do. And for many of us, it's relatively easy for our spouses, for our kids, for our friends, perhaps even for our work colleagues and our neighbors. But Jesus said there's more to it than that. This love, this agape love, this self-sacrificing love, this unconditional love, it's not just for love of neighbor. It's not just for love of humanity, but it's also for our enemies. Woo, Jesus said it. Matthew chapter 5, you should love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. What good does it do to love those who love you? Even the tax collectors do that. They love taking that money. Thank you very much for giving me that money. It's challenging, right? Highs and lows, sorrows and elations. But we're called to love all. Why? Because God clothed us first, forgiving us, being patient with us on a regular, ongoing basis, offering mercy and compassion and kindness even when we did not deserve it. And God simply says, wear these same clothes, demonstrate this same love, be of the same mind, right? And so what does this clothing look like? Well, it's clearly an action. It's not just something that we hold and harbor, but it's something that we give. And so it might look like helping a stranger on the street, kindness. Literally speaking to them as if they were, a human being. Notice the man's sign. He's not asking for food. He's not asking for money. He's just asking to be treated with kindness. It's that easy. Kindness, the clothing of love. It might look like helping someone who's dying of cancer, a loved one, a friend, a child, being with them in their last moments or caring for them day in and day out. Compassion. Knowing that others have gone through similar kinds of situations. That's the article called compassion, and we must wear it. It might look like letting others get credit for things when we know we're due for it. That's called humility. Not thinking less of ourselves, but thinking of ourselves less often. Isn't that powerful? And in that is found love. That's what Christ does for us. It might look like in the throes and the heat of an argument with our parents or with our kids or with our friends that we maintain cool, calm, steady strength. And we don't get in the mix of the fray, but we recognize that we can be present and embrace, and in that is found a gentle strength called meekness. And it can be utterly helpful in all kinds of relationships. It might be the clothing of wearing something with a person who's not overly lovable at the time. Speak to the hand. There are times in our lives when there is someone in our lives that is not being very kind or very compassionate or very gracious, and it's still our job to be patient. I don't do it very well, but we're still called to it. And certainly when we have broken off relationships with somebody, someone has offended us or we've offended them, we've done something to do something wrong, we need to receive their apology, or we need to give them an apology and live into reconciliation, forgiveness. And found in all of that is love. Because when all is said and done, it may be the socks, it may be the shirt, it may be the pants, it may be the hat, but ultimately it's what binds it all together. It's what makes it real. It's what helps bring it all into reality. I pray not only this day, Valentine's Day, when we celebrate a gift of love, when we celebrate romantic love, when we celebrate just sort of the superficialities of love, but we're called to more as followers of Jesus. And I find it really quite ironic that Valentine, after whom the date is named, one of the earliest saints in the Christian tradition, he was killed for his kindness, his compassion, his humility, his meekness, his patience, and his forgiveness. And we need to celebrate, what does it mean then for us to put on the cloak that he wore? The clothes that God gave us, the very life worth living. Put on love. When all else fails, when all else seems wrought, when nothing seems right, love always makes a way. And I pray that it won't just be this day, but that it will be all of our days. That we will be the hands and the eyes and the ears and the feet of Jesus, and that people will see in us the living out of kindness and compassion, meekness and humility, forgiveness and patience. And most of all, love. May it be for you, may it be for others, and may it be for God's greater glory. Thanks be to God. Will you